Hi everyone, it's Matt Bentley Walls here. I just thought I'd do a quick vlog on how not to upset people when you're out on the streets doing street photography. I thought it would be particularly apt, largely due to the fact that we're all a little housebound, or very housebound at the moment with this coronavirus thing going on. So I thought, hey, I haven't vlogged for a while, and I'll I'll do a vlog based on the fact that probably the question that people ask me most, which I'm not sure quite how to take sometimes, but it's a question that people, they ask me, how do you take the photographs without people minding? Don't people mind? Which sort of implies that I'm kind of behaving like an idiot, or I'm a paparazzi photographer or something like that. I'm taking I've never sort of quite understood why people ask me that, and so I've held off doing this vlog because I thought, well, maybe I'm not the best qualified person to provide those answers, because I'm never quite sure why people ask me that. If I was a photographer that I don't know, for example, had innate anxieties about going out onto the street and taking photographs, but I'd sort of worked through it and that kind of thing, then I might be better placed to talk about such things. But I began to ask myself, why it is that I don't have those hang-ups. I don't have those fears and qualms about going out onto the street. So this really is a vlog about that. Why not to have those anxieties, those hang-ups about taking street photography, and really why people that I'm photographing out on the street don't seem to mind. Don't even seem to notice me, which really is probably the best thing in the world, in a sense, in terms of getting a good photograph anyway. And I think what I've sort of uncovered is probably quite interesting. It's interesting to me because, as I say, I've never really asked myself that question. It's never been a concern of mine. So what I thought I'd do, instead of just kind of talking about it, I pulled out a few photographs which I thought would be good examples of different situations whereby I photographed people out on the street mainly, pretty much. And I thought I'd sort of give you those examples and talk over those images, rather than just sort of me sit here and you have a head and shoulder shot of my ugly face. So yeah, without further ado, let's get straight into it. So the first photograph, this was taken in Soho in London. I'm just sort of wandering along, minding my own business, and all of a sudden, wallop, I see this this guy sort of jump out. He actually, I think I'd walked past or something, and then I had to sort of turn around, and there he was. And he was doing this elaborate dance, and I mean, I don't know what he was doing, whether he was advertising something, but hey, I didn't really care. It's just, for me, it's a great photograph. Out of the ordinary, with all his elaborate attire, and he just stood there dancing for me as though I'd asked him to. And the rest, they say, is history. This guy knows I'm taking his photograph. He doesn't mind, and that's all there is to it. I didn't ask permission. I just sort of raised my camera, took a couple of photographs, and he's looking straight into the lens, and that normally ruins a photograph. But in this case, no, it doesn't. not at all. And he's obviously a showman or advertising some. I mean, he's got an H on his hat there, hasn't he? So does that? I don't know what that stands for, or if I'm supposed to know what that stands for. There's a big yellow M for McDonald's or something. I might recognise it, but it matters not. I'm aware. I'm walking along. I know where my camera settings are, what ballpark they're in. I'm ready to go, and that suddenly happens. And hey, got one in the bag. Brilliant. No problem, no issue, nobody's hurt. And this is the main thing maybe to talk about. When I'm walking along, I'm not trying to I'm not hiding behind walls. I'm not leaping out at anybody. I'm not thrusting a camera in anybody's face. I'm not doing anything covert. I'm not you I think I'm just very happy within myself. And I think people see that. And I think people notice that, I'm not sort of separating myself out as a photographer. I think a lot of photographers tend to do that. I think they feel sort of empowered by the fact that they've got this camera and they feel all important. I don't. I feel excited that I'm going to maybe get a great photograph. I'm always thinking about getting a great photograph. Not that, hey, I'm going to have to take 500 photographs to get maybe one decent one. I'm always sort of positive, but I'm not separating myself out. I'm not looking all important. I don't even carry a camera bag to sort of earmark me as somebody who looks like a photographer. I look like I'm going to take your photograph. No, I'm just a person ambling along, blending in, I think. And I'm quite a big guy, but I'm not a slip of a lad anymore, far from it. And I think, I have a little bit of a smile on my face. I don't walk around like a Cheshire cat grinning away, but I think I've just feel okay with myself. People read the non-verbals and I don't raise any eyebrows. I don't upset anybody. And I think that's a really, really important thing. You just respect people. You have a little bit of a smile on your face. I mean, the camera's covering your face half the time, or at least half your face. Anyway, I shoot with a rangefinder, so half is, half isn't. But so they can't necessarily see you smile if you are smiling. And I'm not saying I smile all the time, but I think there's a lot to be said for just staying or just being calm. Not making yourself calm or just not having a hang up. I'm not doing anything illegal. I'm not doing anything illegal. I have a right to be there as much as anybody else. And so I'm perfectly happy within myself. I know I'm not hurting anybody. I'm not mugging an old lady. I'm not doing anything nasty or untoward. I'm not taking salacious photographs. I'm not shoving a camera underneath a public toilet loo or something. I'm just taking photographs of people out on the street in a very sort of relaxed kind of a way. This next photograph, this is a good example because, as I say, most of the time, I don't like people looking at the camera. It tends to ruin the photograph for me most of the time. Not always. Play it by ear. There are situations where it can work. But most of the time I don't. And so most of the time people are profile, as this photograph. This is taken at Euston Station. I should say that these photographs that span 30 years or so, they are shot on film and shot on digital. I shoot both. But, you know, this is a profile photograph. It's nobody's aware. If somebody had turned, well, would it be a problem? I doubt it, because I've already taken the photograph and they're not aware. But does it really matter? You know, it's just a little bit of film. Is it really that much to get worked up about? So yeah, it's another reason not to get hung up, not to have a problem with it. This next photograph again, you know, the person is almost turned away from me. This is taken in Dartmouth. It's sort of, you know, him being a voyeur, looking at the, the sort of semi-dressed woman sitting on the bed. You know, it's an art shop. He's being a voyeur. I'm being a voyeur, looking at him being a voyeur. But again, you know, I saw him coming. I anticipated what he might do. Again, my camera's ready to go. I know the ballpark settings. I know my aperture. And the rest is history, you know. Got one in the can. This next photograph, this is taken in London also, on Oxford Street. I went down to London. I'd seen this photographer, a new recruit at Magnum, Matt Stewart. Don't know whether you're aware of him. Have a look at his stuff. Very refreshing. A new sort of a new position in street photography. I think, you know, a lot of humour injected into his work, and you know, he has his style. I have mine. He was doing these workshops, and I thought I'd go down and spend a couple of days, not with a view to sort of learning how he photographs. You know, I can tell how he photographs just by looking at his photographs. But I thought I'd put myself in that position, do the workshop, get myself out of the bubble, stretch my mind, take on board other ways of doing things. Not because I want to change my style or the way I take photographs, but just because I think it's really, really good to do that. Exercise the mind, stretch the mind. Don't get too locked into, you know, one way of doing things. You can learn. It's always great to learn, I think. So off I went, and this was a Saturday on Oxford Street. He positioned us. There were about 10 of us in the group. He positioned us separately, dispersed us throughout Oxford Street, and this is where I had to stand for about, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. And I found it very, very taxing, very very unpleasant, very awkward. It was a Saturday afternoon, as I said, and I just, you know, there were thousands of people coming at me from every direction constantly, and I don't generally tend to gravitate towards very busy scenes. I'll maybe pick something out of a busy scene, but this was just too busy. It was mayhem. It was crazy. Just tidal wave of people coming at me. I didn't know what to aim the camera at even. And he said, "Don't move. You're not allowed to move." And you know, in a scene like that, I tend to move. I tend to, yeah. I felt very constrained. Just being able to try and find something that was interesting, geometrically interesting, and just being able to put the viewfinder, the rectangle within your camera around something that wasn't crazy busy. Didn't look confused. It didn't look like bedlam, you know. So he came up to me and he asked me how I was doing, and I said, you know, I'm really I'm sinking fast. I'm having real trouble here." And he said, "Good, good. Keep at it and see what happens." Um, I took about 300 or 400 shots that day, and I think what I decided to do, not consciously, but I decided to sort of try and work instead of fighting the madding crowds. I thought I'll try and enhance or go with it. Don't fight it, but go with it. You're never, I can't get rid of the fact that there are so many people. But in the end, I mean, this is the shot that I chose, and it was very well received. I still don't know whether I like it that much, to be honest. Maybe I do. I tend to wait 6 months to find out whether I like something or not. Um, but there was something sufficiently interesting about this photograph for me to think, yeah, maybe that'll work. I'm not displeased with it, and I can't. I'm incorporating some of the humour that Matt gets, but it's certainly not a photograph that is indicative of the way I shoot street photography. And but on several levels, I think it does work. But you know, with all those people, those thousands of people, picked it out because there were so many thousands of people walking past me, seeing me with the camera. But you notice, number one, despite the vast amounts of people coming and at me and everywhere from every other direction, very few are looking at me, other than the girl behind the girl in the middle of the scene. Um, most people are preoccupied with their own lives, doing their own thing, and even the girl looking at me doesn't look upset or angry, or she looks, intrigued maybe. But not one person out of all the thousands of people that walked by me stopped and said, "What are you doing? Why are you taking a photograph? Why?" Not one person. So that's another reason. Don't have a hang up about going out with a camera. It's you're not going out with a gun. You're not going out with a knife or something horrible. It's a camera. Everybody has cameras on them these days, on their phone. Everyone takes photographs. So I really don't think it's a huge issue. It never has been for me. But again, I suppose people look at this photograph and go, "Didn't they mind? Didn't they mind?" Well, how many people are actually bothering to look whether I'm taking a photograph? How many people are bothering to look that I've actually got a camera? That's your answer. That I think that image probably tells you all you need to know. Um, this next image was shot inside it was London, Big Ben in the background. We were on the underground, and it sort of came out into the open along a bridge. I'm not sure what bridge, or you know. Anyway, I shot it through a window, and yeah, people. Yeah, I like it because it is just one off. It's a one snap. I got lucky with with that Big Ben. Just if it had been a second later or half a second later, even I'd have missed it. Just got very very lucky. I love the silhouette of the people, or semi silhouette. And it's just an unusual, different sort of angle on London, I guess, and that's what I like. You always got to be careful of cliches when you're doing street photography, and if you can shoot something from a different angle that doesn't say, "Oh, I'm shooting this because it's a different angle," or "That's what's interesting about it." No, it's got to work within its own, within its own right, I suppose. And if it's a different angle, then that's a bolt-on plus, I suppose. But lots of geometry in that, lots of interesting angles and geometry, and that's how I took that. okay, people are outside, I'm inside. So, hey, that's how that one came about. This next one, I'm actually inside. Not actually. I am inside the tube. I think this is the same. Might have been the same journey. I don't know. And this sort of harps back to the civil rights movement. I very often think that I shoot from the subconscious. If I've read something in a book, an interesting detail or an atmosphere, all sorts of things kind of inform me, I suppose. But the civil rights story about the woman that couldn't sit down or had to give up her seat, or something just resonated about that. The fact she's got her eyes closed and she's exhausted. And people say, well, the moral thing, don't you, didn't you feel you had to ask her permission? It's like, well, if I ask her permission, I miss the photograph, and that doesn't necessarily, exonerate me from that situation. But equally, the photograph before of the people on the bridge, with Big Ben in the background. I didn't ask their permission either, but nobody would say, "Oh, shouldn't you have asked their permission?" So really, what's the difference in that sense? It's yeah, I'm not hurting them. I'm not doing anything unpleasant. It's just a photograph. The photographs don't go to some horrible, salacious, medium, or they're not shown in a unpleasant way. So, I can sleep at night. I'm okay. It's fine. She's not hurt. I'm not hurt. Hey, this next photograph is taken in France. We're out of London finally, and they were just some lads larking about, having fun. French lads. Excuse me. I don't think I asked their permission. But they were too busy having fun to give two hoots about me. I mean, and rightly so. If they'd asked me to see the photographs, I'd have shown them. But when you see something, grab it. You're not. It's not. You're not stealing something from a shop, or it's just a photograph. Did they mind? Not two hoots. Did they even bother looking or paying attention to me? Not for a second. As I say, far too busy having fun. So, these are all examples of why people don't mind. People don't even know. People don't care. And it's never been a problem. It's never been a problem for me. This next photograph, it's not meant to be shown as a two, but this is obviously once he's entered the water, or is about halfway into the water. Just two separate photographs in their own right, as far as I'm concerned. Well, I suppose they could be shown as a two, but that's there's not much to say about that one. Other than to say that he's obviously not aware that I'm taking the photograph. But yeah, that was taken in a place called La Flotte in Ile de Ré, just off the coast of La Rochelle. You have to go over a big, long, beautiful bridge. And yeah, just some lads having fun. And that's generally what I tend to do. I tend to shoot, the hatch, match, and dispatch of the human condition. Laughter, love, play, despair, homelessness, you name it. Work. It's just a constant fascination to me. I don't know why. It's just an overriding passion for me. This next photograph, again taken in France in Ile de Ré, I was sat down having a coffee, but the camera's ready to go. I'd taken a few photographs of. I have a fetish, I have to admit, French window shutters. I don't know what it is. There's just something beautiful about them, and this was just like a backdrop for me. And I think I was definitely thinking if I could just get something interesting to go by as I sat there sipping my coffee, it would make for an interesting, lovely scene. And as I said, taking a few photographs of people walking past or what have you, and I just happened to see in time these two friends coming along, having a hoot, laughing their head off about something or other. I'm not sure what. Doesn't matter. And I thought that would, how do I take my photographs? That's how they come about sometimes. But again, they're not aware. No need to have any qualms or hang-ups about, about taking a photograph. I don't, maybe I'm missing something. Maybe I don't know. For me, why, if I'd run after these girls and stopped them and said, "Hey, I've just taken a photograph of you. Do you mind?" What are they going to say? They might say, "Oh, can we have a look?" But are they going to have any real hang up about the fact that I've just taken a lovely photograph? I didn't think so. And so it doesn't ever occur to me that people would mind, yeah. I just going back to something I said earlier about, I think the subconscious takes takes a big hand in some of the photographs I take. People say, "Oh, who's your favorite photographer?" or blah blah blah, and for me, it's not. I'm never trying to emulate other photographers. It's fine if you do. I'm not judging anybody else, but for me, I'm absolutely certain. It's not a conscious thing when I'm actually taking the photograph, but this definitely harps back to a film that I saw when I was a kid, very young. I was probably about 8, 9, 10 years old, something like that. And there was a scene in it. The film was was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, and there's a scene in there where the guy puts a girl on the front of the bike and rides around, and the song "Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head." It was just such a beautiful, beautiful scene, and it resonated with me, and it's always stayed with me. And I think that's where this comes from. That's where, on some level, the subconscious comes into play when you take a photograph. What do you gravitate towards? What interests you? Why do you decide to take the photograph at that particular moment? Why are you drawn to that particular scene? And it happens time and time again. As I say, it's not. I'm not aware of it at the time of shooting, but a week later, 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, 3 months later, whatever it is, I suddenly, it suddenly reminds me of something. I get a deja vu moment, like I've been there before, or I've seen that. And it just suddenly connects with something I've read, something I've seen, whatever. It can be anything. Something I've previously witnessed, something I've previously experienced, And yeah, a homage to that film, maybe. I don't know. Not always, I'm not saying always, but a lot of the time. Um, this next photograph was taken in La Rochelle. And again, people are going about their daily business, so not seeing you and not even aware that you're taking a photograph. So, again, it's another example not to have a hang up. Um, this time, that's another bike, I suppose. But the main thing with this photograph is twos. So I just sort of noticed that there's always in the obvious twos, three sets of twos. One of the people are looking straight ahead, and the other person within that two has got their head slightly towards one side or looking the other way, and it just sort of resonated on that level with me. But then I noticed this little dog that she's holding. The two closest to the wall, furthest away from me. There's this little dog rearing its head, and I thought, damn, I've only got the one dog. It ruins the sequence, if you like. And then I noticed down below, is it an Alsatian? I don't know. Walking along, and again the one dog is looking straight ahead, and the other one is looking to the side. So I had my twos again. I like the fact that the dog's leg is hidden behind the fork of the bike as it's going by, and yeah, that's yeah, I couldn't have seen that as I took the photograph, but I just got lucky with it. The peeling paint on the door and the texture and something about it. It just seemed to work on some level, and that's how that one came about. But again, nobody knows I've even taken the photograph. Not nobody knows as in, oh, I've been really clandestine and really sneaky. No, just I'm holding a camera, again, sitting down, having a coffee, I think. Yeah, I was. And people are just going about their business. No big deal. No sweat. The next photograph is taken at the Louvre. I'm fairly close there, but again, I just see the scene. The contrasts of age and the color of dresses, and one person's got their legs crossed and the other hasn't, but the common denominator sort of cuts through the generations, if you like, are these devices, the mobile phones that they're looking at. And again, the texture, the smoothness of the marble or whatever it is, and they're just looking at their phones, not in the least bit interested in me. I suppose people might say, well, what if one of them looked up? Well, what if? So what? I'm not pulling faces at them. I'm not doing anything nasty. It's just a photograph. So this next photograph, Paris again. It's quite an interesting photograph. I just saw this couple, going through their moves, dancing. It just looked beautiful to me. It was taken at the Jardin de Luxembourg. One of my favourite places in Paris. One of my favourite places, full stop, actually. And yeah, they were just going through their moves. And, I don't know whether they were practicing something or just having a nice afternoon in Paris, as you might. Did they mind? Not for 1 second. She's got her back to me. He's actually got his eyes closed. He's obviously just blinking. But and this couple to the right. Now, normally I would try and work an angle to exclude them from the shot, what's going on. They're having an argument of some description. She's bending his ear about something, but for some reason, I wanted it in. I don't know why. It was all sort of happened very, very quickly, and I just sort of like it. She's wagging her finger at him. But when you look a bit closer, he's got his earphones in, and so he's not listening to a word she's saying. And I just like that contrast of, it's like harmony and discord. The harmony of the dancing couple, and then the discord of her giving him a tongue lashing. But again, nobody bats an eyelid, and I've got my photograph. This next photograph is just, I think special, but I just thought was a lovely, lovely shot of mother and daughter, playing patty cake. Is that what it's called? Again, far too engrossed in what they're doing to bat an eyelid at me. And, that's how you take street photographs. It's people immersed in their world, and far too busy to give two hoots about me, just some bloke walking around with a camera. I'm not going up to them and thrusting it in their face. I'm not shouting. I'm not making a fuss or a commotion. I use a little quiet camera so it doesn't make a big noise. It's a little camera. It's not a big DSLR. I'm not taking lots and lots of photographs and, drawing attention to myself. I'm just walking along. Boom. There's actually a video of me walking along taking these photographs. So you can really see what I do or what I don't do. I think is probably the more important thing. What I don't do, I'm not making a big fuss. I'm not causing a commotion. I'll maybe put that up as well after this vlog, so you can actually see not how easy it is, but how unfussy I make it. It's just a stroll, walking along, and you can actually see, this mother and daughter, how I approach it. I take 2, maybe 3 shots, carry on walking. And it really is that simple. I will put it up just so you can see that I'm not making up stories. I'm not, overly simplifying something. I think the big thing with street photography is just being receptive, not being blasé to things. There's a lot of beautiful stuff happening, right in front of you. But maybe because we've seen it a million times before, it doesn't stand out. But for me, I understand familiarity can breed complacency, but actually, if you're receptive, things, freezing an image somehow, sometimes, produces a whole different kind of outlook on something, a whole different atmosphere, a whole different way of, as we see things in real time, we can just really not pay too much attention. But as soon as you freeze something, you begin to notice an awful lot more. It begins to take on a life of its own. This next photograph taken in the Paris metro, the guy's lines on his forehead as he's leaning against the metal bar, coupled with the lines on his forearms, and then the lines on the door, the fatigue of the door, the scratches on the door. And it was just something that resonated with me about that. in the fact that, like on the London Underground or the Paris Metro, if you look at a map, that's all lines taking you to another station or whatever. The lines on his forehead were like the lines on a map, on a little map that you can get in the underground. And then the woman sitting next to him, by contrast, with a sort of perfectly smooth complexion, and who also coincidentally happens to have her eyes shut for different reasons, but nonetheless, I don't know. I just like ambiguity. I like, forget the lines, forget the woman sitting next to him. He's just absolutely exhausted, and there's something. There's something that I don't know, just sort of fascinating about that in itself for me. But again, nobody notices. It's just, you see something, I pick up the camera and try and shoot it. It doesn't always work. I don't always like it. But, it's only a bit of film. If I don't like something, then what's the big deal? This next photograph it's about 30 years old, probably over 30 years old. 1988. What's that? Ooh, 32 years old. Wow. That's more years than I want to remember. But yeah, what's behind this? It's just a guy walking along, and I'm not even pointing the camera at him. I just get his feet in, and his shadow, and I really have no way of describing this photograph. It's a one-off, one shot. I just saw him walking along. I mean, people say don't shoot into the sun. Absolute rubbish as far as I'm concerned. Shoot into the sun, shoot with the sun on the back of your neck. It doesn't matter. If there's an image, then there's an image. And for me, it's not, don't constrain yourself by absurd laws. I think shooting the sun is amazing sometimes. It can ruin your photograph as well, but it can be amazing. So I don't impose silly, rigid laws. Why? What's the point? What good is that doing? This is a sun. The sun is behind him, so I'm in effect shooting into the sun. Shadows coming along. The head meets the reflection of the bottom of the lamppost. Just again, I'm sure this is from a film somewhere. I'm not sure which film. Long. I don't know. Maybe I don't. I can't think off the top of my head, and I really don't know what this is about. I just love the reflection of the head of the lamppost in the puddle that sort of curves around to meet his head. It's a little bit surreal, maybe. I honestly have no idea what this is about. Why I'm photographing this. It was one of my sort of earliest photographs, really. Yeah, no explanation. The guy doesn't give two hoots. Obviously, no big deal. Got an image that I like. This next one again, very old. It's a film, shot on film, and there's actually quite an interesting story to this, because I was in Morocco for 9 months, and I didn't process my film until I got back, and I'd actually forgotten. This is just a one shot photograph, no setup, obviously, and I had forgotten that I'd taken this photograph. I literally had, and I remember having processed the film and made my contact sheets. I it was a couple of months later, I suddenly remembered that I'd taken this photograph, or I thought I'd taken this photograph. And so I sort of went through my contact sheets and my negatives, and I couldn't find it. And I just thought, oh, maybe did I take that photograph? Was it a dream? I don't know, but I could not find it. Um, it was just literally a scene of, the rule of thirds, I suppose, with the white wall and the people in the background looking over high this high wall, and then a couple of people putting washing out off in the distance in the top building, on top of the building. Um, but these two guys were walking along, and one was obviously in traditional dress, and one wasn't. One was looking quite Western, and I quite liked that contrast, I suppose. Um, but throughout the day, I'd noticed this lad flick flacking around, and I mean, he wasn't touting, he wasn't asking for money or anything. He was just like a little rubber band, kept on appearing from nowhere. And as I was about to take this photograph, I just sensed him about to do something, and I got incredibly lucky. This is like millisecond stuff. I just got it. It's obviously full frame. If it being a fraction of a second later or before early, if I pressed the shutter too soon, it wouldn't have worked. But that's how that came about. But going back to the story behind it, it was that I couldn't find this image anywhere, and so I just resigned myself to the fact that maybe I hadn't taken it, or maybe you know and I suddenly thought to myself, well, because it was taken so quickly, and it was just such a split second thing. Maybe I hadn't got my maybe I'd overexposed it or underexposed it or something. So I checked the contact sheet again, couldn't see anything. And then I got my magnifying glass and got the negatives and held them up to a window. And I went through, and I found it. I saw the detail in what was, a black image on the negative. So, 3 stops overexposed at least. And on the contact sheet, it was just white. It was just completely bleached out. Again, no detail whatsoever. And so I found it, and it was an image that I'm particularly proud of, but it very nearly wasn't. It very nearly didn't see the light of day, if you pardon the pun. It and yeah, I was lucky to get the photograph, but I was equally lucky to find the photograph again. It could very nearly didn't happen. Very nearly was a photograph that wasn't. But yeah, that's how that came about. And again, the two guys are far too preoccupied with this lad. And I am, I get my photograph. It's a wonderful thing sometimes. This next photograph was taken in Oslo, in Norway. I was just literally walking down the street with my camera, and this is a digital image shot on a Leica M10. One of the last photographs I took before my camera got stolen. But anyway, I just saw this scene, and it just was so beautiful. It's a little bit cliche, I guess, but I don't care. I just loved how her leg was draped over his. Again, people preoccupied, and it's full frame, shot on my beloved 50mm lens that got stolen also. My camera settings are, I know the ballpark, and I'm just ready to walk up and take the photograph. And she did notice after I'd taken the photograph, and I just had a few words and said, both of you look so beautiful. It looks like the epitome of love. And she sort of smiled and she chatted a little bit. And did she mind once for 1 second? I think if anything, she was vaguely flattered or something. I mean, I don't know, but she certainly didn't object or have a problem with it. And I think she understood what I was doing. And just a lovely, lovely scene. Quite close. And hey, that's how that one came about. This next one was, well, there's another story. But I was in Salzburg in Austria, and I had pounded the streets all day, the main drags, the little side streets, and sometimes just nothing seems to really happen, or you take photographs all day long, and you kind of have a sense when you've got something and when you haven't got something. And I got photographs in the can, but they were just not that special, or so I thought. And it turns out I was right. I had got some okay photographs, but we're not looking for okay. We're looking for something that resonates, something that works on different levels for different reasons. And I'd literally sort of resigned myself to the fact that it was going to be a bad day at the office. And I sort of lowered my camera, and I remember turning round, and there was this ice cream vendor. It was a hole in the wall. You could either walk in and buy an ice cream, or be served through this hole in a wall. And this is what I saw. And she just got this smile on her face, as if, I don't know whether she'd been watching me trying to take photographs and thought, what a weird guy, or I don't know. She just sort of seemed vaguely amused by something. But the lovely thing is that I raised my camera, just nice and calmly, but she didn't change her gaze. She didn't, she's just got this lovely enigmatic half smile, I guess. And that's one of the things I love about this photograph. Now, that said, again, harping back to the subconscious, many years ago, I have a dear friend, and I used to meet up with her a couple of times a week, and we'd just sit and have a coffee in this place called Drucker's, Drucker's. It's a sort of mock Viennese type shop. They used to do Viennese cakes, and the coffee was pretty ropey, but we just used to hook up and do a crossword and chat and what have you. But on the walls were these kind of mock prints of famous paintings, impressionist paintings. And one of them, in this cafe that we used to go to, was Edward Manet's Manet or Monet, I can never remember. I always get confused. Of the scene at the bar at the Folies Bergère, a famous painting, and it just suddenly occurred to me, the hands resting on the counter, exactly the same way, and that's what I'm sure what attracted me, or why this image resonated so greatly with me. And bang, again, the camera's ready to go, and I just raised my camera. It's all these are full frame images, and that's how I framed it. She's staring right at me, so she can have all the objection in the world, but she doesn't. Okay, so I'm going to be a complete hypocrite now. I'm going to tell you about this one incident that happened, the one and only time in 30 odd years of taking street photographs. It was happened in Salzburg on this trip away. The same trip. It happened probably a couple of days before. I just arrived, and this image was taken on a Leica monochrome, and it was fairly new to me at the time. And it was at night, and I stood outside my apartment, and I was testing the camera at night in low light to see what I'd get. So I was just literally standing on the street, taking photographs of the street, just rattling off a few shots so I could get back upstairs to the apartment and have a look to see how it managed low light. And all of a sudden, this guy appears from nowhere. You know, he took me by surprise because I hadn't seen him. I certainly wasn't photographing him. And he came up and he had this rant. You can't take my photograph. I didn't tell you you could take my photo. All this kind of stuff. The things that people say, you know, to me, aren't you concerned or worried about taking people's photographs? You know, the exact thing. And this happened about, I don't know, this what was 2013. So yeah, 7 years ago. It's the one and only time. And this guy just ranted at me. Absolutely had a rant. But what I did, and I don't suggest doing this, I think it was incredibly stupid with hindsight. As he was having his rant, I was thinking about what to say to him when he'd sort of blown himself out and exhausted himself. And I had a sort of out-of-body experience. He came to a grinding halt, and I just sort of heard myself say, "Mate, have you got delusions of grandeur?" And he said, "What do you mean?" I said, "Well, I've got all of beautiful Salzburg to photograph. What on earth makes you think I would want to take a photograph of you?" Now, I'm not going to suggest saying that or doing that with a complete stranger. But at the time, I was so incensed that, you know, this complete stranger marched up to me and was telling me to delete the photographs, my camera, when I hadn't even photographed him. And anyway, he sort of scuttled off and you know, head bowed, and I just thought, you know, okay, finally I've had this one moment. And so, you know, I'm making this vlog. It has happened once to me. Nothing came of it. I didn't delete the photograph, and hey, that was that. I suppose, you know, it can happen. It can happen. I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm not saying, you know, I guess it's something to be aware of. But the vast majority of the time, you know, unless you're being obnoxious, there are photographers that I won't name, but there are photographers that do love to go and stick a camera in somebody's face and be extremely aggressive. And I don't like this. I don't think the ends justify the means. And for me, I wouldn't be happy doing that. And that would concern me. That would affect my conscience. I would not like that. I wouldn't like somebody else to do it to me. And so therefore, I won't do it to somebody else. It's as simple as that. You know, empathy. Yeah, you know, yeah. There are lots of people that are fine with that or think that it's right. For me, that's an absolute no. You know, I've never done that. I'd never contemplate doing that. I'm talking about just literally, you know, going up and standing a meter from somebody and scaring the living daylights out, brandishing a camera and shoving it in their face and being obnoxious. That's not on. That's not acceptable. Behave well. Behave nicely. Have respect. Basic decency. So anyway, that was the one time. This next photograph taken in Spain. Again, she's not aware, so it's no big deal. No big deal. I think I took about 3 or 4 photographs of this scene, and she did turn around and she smiled. Hey, that's nice. This next one was also taken in Spain, Andalusia. These people, I don't know how they are, 14, 15, 16 maybe. They saw me and I sort of raised my camera as if to tell them I was going to take a photograph, and they kind of scuffled themselves into this position for me, without a word said. So people people are sometimes accommodating. It was mildly amusing to them, and they were pranking around, having fun. And then this lad looks up from nowhere from behind the wall, and that's what makes the photograph. I just got lucky. But if you're not receptive, if you're not seeing, if you're not anticipating, then things won't. You won't get that luck. You get the luck by investing time and the work. You don't get that slice of luck unless you're prepared to go out on a limb. This next photograph, again, Spain, I have no idea to this day whether he minded me taking the photograph or whether he was just larking about and, playing with me a little bit. I don't know. But for me, it makes the photograph. It's got some nice converging lines there as well. I don't know, but that's how that one came about. He sees me, but he doesn't protest. He doesn't run off. He doesn't hide. He just, momentarily stands there, and then suddenly puts his hand across his face. Great, no big deal. This last photograph is a couple of Americans in Stockholm. And that's kind of what resonated with me. These 2 people, they could have been anywhere, but they just looked so absolutely 100% American. They could not be anything else. I mean, I didn't stop and talk to them, but I put money on the fact that they were American. And that's, they're looking at something, I don't know what. They're preoccupied by something. I just literally raise the camera and take the photograph. And, it's not about, images aren't about preaching to people. It's just sharing. It's just, it's more about asking a question than making a statement, I think, for me. Ambiguity and, the tourist abroad. I don't know, but that's how that photograph came about. But again, nobody's hurt, nobody's upset, nobody bats an eyelid, nobody really cares 2 hoots. And so, if you're thinking about taking photographs, street photography, I don't like the term street photography. It's reportage photography for me every day. That is maybe of interest. That is maybe letting you know that there really is not that much to be concerned about. As I say, don't be obnoxious. Don't be arrogant. Be okay within yourself. Be at peace with yourself. Know that you're not breaking the law. You're not hurting anybody. You're not mugging anybody. It's only a photograph. Get over it. Look forward to taking the photograph. I'm not saying nobody will ever come up to you ever, but one time in 30 odd years of taking photographs, that's a tiny price to pay for one. I honestly think with hindsight, that guy that came up to me, there was something a little bit weird about him. There was something, I don't know whether he was a little bit drunk or there was something a little bit wrong with him. He just seemed a bit odd to me for whatever reason. Not because he came up to me, but the way he was ranting at me and the way he looked, something about him just made me think there was something a bit odd. I don't know. People. I think people have given me the middle finger. They've given me the. But again, they were sort of old guys in London who were drunk, and I wasn't even maybe they'd have done that to anybody, whether they got a camera or not. I have no idea. They just, it can happen, but I think it is far more likely to happen if you're being, let's not beat about the bush. If you're being an idiot, if you're being obnoxious, if you're being aggressive, if you're not being reasonable and pleasant, if you're looking like a photographer, a serious photographer that's gonna, no, don't draw attention to yourself. As I said, I don't even have a bag. I just have a fixed lens, a little lens. What do I need a bag for? I've got my camera, I've got my lens. That's all I need. I think some photographers, want to look like they're a photographer. It's like an empowering thing or something. What do you need? If you're going to shoot all day, you need maybe a couple of extra batteries, an SD card, or some film. That just fits in your pocket nicely. You don't need a bag. And why take a bag anyway? Because people, it's just something else to worry about and to negotiate. Another weight on your shoulder while you're lifting your camera. And you're trying to counteract the weight of the bag. And, if at all possible, leave it at, I never ever take a bag out with me. I just don't believe it. I have a camera bag, yes. That's just used to transport my cameras from A to B when I'm not photographing. But when I'm out on the street, just a camera. I can raise and lower it. I can put it over my shoulder. I can put it under a jacket if I want it out of sight for whatever reason. Just be a reasonable person and go and have fun. Have fun. Enjoy getting that next shot. But be humble. I think that's really, really important. And I think that's probably why I have had, personally speaking, very, very, very little hassle. One instant in how many millions of thousands of millions of, I don't know. What's the what's the ratio there? I mean, wow, it doesn't bear thinking about. It just doesn't, it's not a deal, is it? Certainly not a reason not to do something, not to go out and take photographs. So anyway, I've rattled on for far too long now. As I say, I thought maybe it'd be good to do this vlog now that we're in this in these peculiar times. And I thought it might be a little bit of entertainment or a little bit of interest to some people. Something to do while you're housebound. But anyway, thank you very much for stopping by. And see you next time. Cheers for now.